Hello everyone, I'm Danielle. I'm a final year medical student, and today we are joined by Prof. Lillian Arts, who's the director of the Gender Health and Justice Research Unit. And in this video, we're going to speak a bit about the legalities surrounding intimate partner violence. So we have our lecture notes and a lot of information available online, but I'd like to ask Prof. Arts to just share with us on the more practical side what sort of information we should be giving patients as junior doctors in consultations. Arts, can I ask you to run through the process of obtaining a protection order, sort of in a way that you would explain it to a patient or to a survivor?
Yeah, so the protection order, you can apply for 24 hours a day. So they're called after hours applications. If it's outside of court hours, you can ask the police to assist you in contacting the courts on your behalf if you need it issued immediately. There's a bit of a caveat because that rarely happens. The police will ask you to wait and go to the magistrate's court on Monday to apply for that order. The process is very straightforward, and most courts in the Western Cape, I can't speak to other provinces, will have non-governmental organizations working in the courts or with the courts to assist people who want to apply for an order with doing that. You give an affidavit to the clerk of the court or the court support person, setting out what happened, that incident. And it's always important to reflect on previous incidents, because we always know that people don't often report the first time they've experienced domestic violence. So quite simply, in the affidavit, you describe the most recent incident and other incidences that have occurred. And then there's a form that gets filled out called Form 1, and it's basically a checklist which outlines the range of abuses that you would like to prohibit or stop in that order. That gets submitted to the magistrate, who will issue an interim protection order. And that order will say that the applicant, the victim, and the respondent, the accused person, must return to the court on a particular date to finalize the order. But it's quite a simple process, and it shouldn't take more than an hour to go through the entire process. The unfortunate part is that Mondays in particular are very busy times for the court, so the applicants might be waiting a few hours before they're able to see a clerk to make an application. But the process itself, you don't need legal representation. You can go in on your own. I always suggest a support person attends, particularly if the respondent is aware that an application is being made, just in terms of the safety and well-being of the applicant, that she or he is with somebody while making the application.
With the return date, if the accused or the victim don't appear in court, what happens then?
Basically, the courts can do it on the papers. So if they're convinced of two things: one, that there is evidence of domestic violence in relation to the affidavit that was submitted, as well as the Form 1 that was filled out for the application, and the court is convinced that the respondent or the accused was properly served to come to court, then they can finalize that order in absence of both the complainant and the respondent.
That's really helpful in cases perhaps where it's impossible for people to appear in court and so on.
Yeah. And they can also send a representative to the court if they're in an ambulatory state or unable to attend for whatever reason, and can ask the court to at least observe with somebody who has material interest in the matter. Again, these are issues that are always open to interpretation at the courts, and the law is one of those things that we can monitor and tighten up and ensure that the practices that happen to the courts live out the intentions of the legislation.
And I've always wondered about how much benefit the protection order actually has, and whether it does aggravate the situation or not, or whether it can really make a big difference. What is your view on that?
I do waver sometimes. I think one of the most interesting moments in my career was when I did a study on women who didn't return to finalize their protection orders and the reasons for that. And 95% of the women that I spoke to said, "I just want to thank you for calling me just to check if I'm okay." And if I was to give a hint or a tip to a healthcare practitioner, is to do that follow-up call, because sometimes that's all people need to reinvest in the process of the application for an order, that somebody's out there watching and thinking and monitoring the situation. It doesn't really answer the efficacy of the protection orders. In that study, some women said it was very effective. Even the interim protection order was very effective. A few women said that the issuing of the protection order aggravated an already volatile situation. I would say by and large, the protection order in most cases is an effective remedy. Sometimes couples and relationships just get to an intractable space where they can no longer negotiate, a non-violent environment, and sometimes it's extremely effective. And remembering that the protection order is not just about physical violence, it's about sexual violence, psychological harm, harassment, stalking. It's got a range of measures to protect a range of types of abuses. So for the most part, it's effective, but no one can ever guarantee that the protection order will not aggravate an already volatile domestic relationship or very volatile abuser.
Yeah. So I suppose our approach would be to just sort of give the information, explain the thinking about it, and then leave that decision and judgment up to the patient who knows their own situation the best.
Absolutely. I, if it's an adult that you're dealing with, just, to make sure that your process is always victim-centered and mindful, and your risk assessment work will determine the vulnerability of that patient. And in addition, just to giving accurate information would be ensuring that that person has taken on those referrals that you've given to them, whether it's shelters or psychosocial support services or court support services, just equipping them with the tools to be able to manage a situation in an environment where people are aware of the situation, that it's been reported, that they get the support that they need, and other questions that you might not be able to answer about the legal process, that they're in the hands of somebody that can more appropriately answer those questions. In the same way that you would refer to a specialist, it's the same sort of thing. You're making a referral to somebody with more, refined knowledge of the subject matter that can be in a better position to care for that patient.
Definitely. And while we're on the topic of legal documents, the other one that always springs to mind when we think about domestic violence, intimate partner violence, is the J88 form. Do you want to just quickly touch on the role of that form?
Yeah, that one's been a tricky one, because there isn't anything in the legislation at the moment that directs healthcare practitioners to utilize the J88 form in domestic violence cases. So I think part of the reforms will be reinforcing the importance of that. And I know it does take time to fill out, and I can't imagine it would be an easy document to fill out when you've got a vulnerable patient. But it does go to support further interventions that the complainant might need. If they want to follow through with criminal charges, if they want to, lay a civil claim, if they want to, proceed with a protection order, because we have to be mindful that people who are exposed to domestic violence have a number of options. They can apply for a protection order, they can lay a criminal charge, or they can do both. That documentation is just critical in terms of, amplifying the range of choices that people who are exposed to violence have.
Thank you so much, Prof. I think that this conversation is really important in helping us understand what our options are, what information we can tell patients about protection orders, the J88 form, as well as the Domestic Violence Act, and it's certainly very helpful for us going forward.
Perfect. And if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to email or Zoom me in or call or have another conversation, and we can answer some of those outstanding questions we may not have addressed today.
Thank you so much.